to another episode of Resourceful Women in Mining. And I'm really excited today because I am talking with a young woman in mining. And so that means that in recent years, she decided mining was the place for her. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Sarah. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Sarah. I'm currently a mine geologist up at Diavik Diamond Mine. I've been at Diavik for over 5 years now, doing in a range of roles, starting as a mining graduate before becoming a full-time mine geologist. I also did my co-op at Diavik back in 2019 for 8 months, which was where I first dipped my toes into the industry and really fell in love with the work and the people I worked with. And yeah, that's how I kind of ended up where I am today.
That's excellent. And Sarah and I happened to meet because I was at Amy's Roundup and I happened by and I saw a session on, how to get into the mining industry. So it was education for students, and Sarah was one of the guest speakers, and she did a great presentation for students in high school. And that's one of the things that I've always been intrigued by is how do we reach students who are interested in making mining their career when mining happens away from everything and everyone for the most part? So unless you're living in a remote community that's affected or as neighbor to a mine operation, it's really not something that kids get a lot of exposure to. And in that way, that's part of why it caught my eye. So Sarah, if you want to let people know, how did you get involved in sharing mining as a potential career?
Yeah, so both my parents are secondary student teachers, and my mom is a teacher that supports the Minerals Ed nonprofit, and they help with mineral and mineral resource outreach for students and teachers in BC. So they asked if I would come and talk about sort of my career and how I got into mining personally and just show what kind of careers are out there. I think especially growing up in the Lower Mainland near Vancouver, you don't see as many mining career options, although mining companies have offices in Vancouver. You don't see these far away sort of remote jobs or small town. And so especially growing up, I didn't really know that this was a career I could consider. It's really important to me to show to students these days, like what kind of opportunities are out there for girls and guys and whoever wants to enter the industry. And it's a welcoming place, and there's so much to learn and to grow. And yeah, so that's just kind of how
I felt the enthusiasm when you were talking to the students there, and I think they felt it too. They had some really interesting questions, some really technical questions. How deep is the mine? So that one gave me kind of a chuckle. And I really, I wanted to be at that session. And as, a member of the press, I was able to attend and talk to the people starting it and everything. What made me really chuckle is that you were at Diavik. And that intersection is so funny because when we were living in Yellowknife, my family and I, that was the thing. So Sarah was talking about a structure that my partner had worked on. So he came on just as they were dewatering. And I was listening, I was like, I wonder what the story of the dike is after, so many years later. And it was really fascinating to hear that part of the mining life cycle, because we were there early on, he was there early on, and it was such a boom. And for you to be working on it when it's approaching closure is something that, the mining industry doesn't tend to talk about a lot. It's like, we're going to be here for 20 years. It's going to be really hot, and then it's going to be really cold.
Totally.
Because, looking at the mine cycle, when it's gone, right? And that's the thing. That was an interesting question from the audience. It's like, well, are you going to do more there? You're like, no, closure's going to be closed.
Yeah. I mean, Diavik's done such a great job with their closure plan, and our closure team with progressive reclamation and trying to prepare for closure. As we know, the mine is ending and we've exhausted our resource. And so they've done a really great job working with our local communities and our partners in the Northwest Territories to ensure that the land is returning to its former self, if not better. And so it's a really interesting opportunity. And I feel really lucky that I've been able to experience it, because not very often you get to see a closure of a mine, especially one as notable as Diavik, and in such an interesting environment.
It is kind of a once in a lifetime mine.
Totally.
Mining the lake bed in and of itself, we have some interesting discussions at home, and when we were there in the early days, there was a lot of talk about instrumentation and a lot of talk about the data that could come and the learning that could happen with a mine like that operating a containment structure, like a giant civil structure that was constantly experiencing blast pressures and pore pressures, and it's really hard to get that data in a lab. So
it is such a cool place, and it's such an engineering feat what they've done there.
Really?
So every time I fly into site and get to see it with the lake, it is such a cool experience.
Kind of a wow.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And I chuckled again, because the picture that you had on, we have that picture in our home. It's a little earlier stage, so it doesn't have the 418, but it was really fascinating for me to see that mine could touch so many lives. So not just the people who were working at it, you're very much next generation. I would say maybe even third generation, age-wise, to work there, and to have the benefit of going there and being in that remote area and getting to actually live part of your life in the subarctic is a phenomenal treat, I would say. It's life-changing to be able to go north and feel what it's like there. It's one thing to see pictures, but it's another to actually feel what the weather is like, what the climate is doing, to know little tidbits like, oh yes, stainless steel shatters like an ice cube at minus 55.
Yes, yeah, of course.
And all the logistics of it. And, you mentioned the ice road and all of those things. And it's a pretty rare and special thing to be able to see a project like that, contribute to it. You saw it through a really difficult point in time, you were mentioning. So I'll let you talk about COVID.
Yes, I mean, COVID definitely affected all of our lives. So I did my co-op back at Diavik in 2019, and then I returned back to school in January 2020. Did not know what was going to be ahead. And as March rolled around, and then all of our exams went online, and I quickly soon realized I was probably not going to work a 4-month co-op that summer, I decided to plow through my studies and finish December of 2020. And I was very fortunate, because some of my old coworkers had reached out and asked if I was interested in returning to Diavik once I graduated. They were looking for someone to fill the mining graduate role. And this seemed like a really good opportunity to be able to actually go work somewhere, not just have a remote job back home in Vancouver. And Diavik took so many precautions in order to stay open during COVID. We felt really, really fortunate that we were able to go to work and work safely. And I felt very fortunate to have that job. I mean, we had to isolate, and we did our multitude of COVID tests and everything to stay afloat. So many swabs. I definitely don't miss that at all. But yeah, Diavik did a really, really good job of maintaining the workforce and keeping everybody safe and able to stay profitable during that time when a lot of other places weren't able to.
Yeah. And it was really a stretch. And that was a really interesting period of time as well, just in the world, but especially in the remote world. We had, I still see some remnants of COVID, because I do live in Yellowknife. I see some stickers that are kind of left over, and they say, stay one caribou apart. And all those different things. So the safety piece of it, I think, is a really fascinating. It's kind of theoretically fascinating, but in the practicality of it, what happens at a mine site that allows you to feel safe there?
I think, in general at Diavik has such a good culture and such a good community. And there's a reason people have worked there for 10, if not 20 years. And you go to Diavik wanting to be part of that safe environment. And And so I think with COVID, they knew exactly what they wanted to do in order to make everyone safe. So if that meant isolating before coming up to work, doing the swabs, staying accountable, taking your temperature, we had a pretty transparent, I guess is the right word.
It's amazing what that does for a group's understanding. Like the transparency, I think, really builds trust. That's something that's always a theme. When it comes to safety, is do you trust the company? Do you trust your supervisors? Do you trust your employees?
Yes.
And that transparency, I think, goes a long way to being able to not just demonstrate that it's a priority, but to be able to see that it's a priority. Is, in front of your eyes, you see it, it builds the trust and the reliability. And it's like they said they would do it, they did it, they cared enough to do it. And yeah, they're able to do that. Are you able to keep your employees safe? I think that's a huge question. So if we get past COVID, which not everyone has done yet, but if we do our best to get past COVID and look at safety in a more general sense, your student term there, I think, is the time that you were referring to where you didn't know what it was going to be like at a mine. So what were some of the, things that you were wondering about before you went?
Yeah, I genuinely knew nothing about mining very much at all. I was in geophysics in undergrad, so I was studying a lot more physics and math and not as much mining. I knew it was tangentially related, but going in, I didn't even know, like, when we get off the plane, do I end up at the campsite? Like, where do we go? Like, I had no idea. Getting on the bus, I didn't know what the process plant was. I didn't know what the backfill was. So I was going in very green, and I just had so many questions. And I feel like sometimes you can hear scary news stories and things from mine sites around the world or in the past. But I was really impressed with Diavik and how robust their training program is and their critical risk management system. We go through quite a bit of training, and they have their program for new people on site and having mentoring. And I just learned a lot from my coworkers and other co-op students who had been there before me and my supervisors. And I felt like I was in really good hands. It was a technical learning curve, just learning the job and learning skills that you don't just learn in a classroom, but also just the safety aspect as well, identifying different risks in the field. And Diavik was always really good that if you didn't know something, like, they really encouraged you to ask questions. And it's sometimes those people that haven't been in that environment before and aren't used to risk normalization that you can point out something that maybe if you're not sure what it's about or needs to be improved. And so that's really important.
And so what did they do communication wise to make you feel like not only was it okay to speak up if you saw something safety related, but that it was part of your responsibility in your work? How does that feeling for you?
It's pretty ingrained in our training system and in our morning toolboxes and looking to improve and make the environment better. It's encouraged amongst the team. Whether it's quarterly town halls with our CEO or just again with our safety toolboxes. But yeah, I think we've always had just really welcoming coworkers and mentors and supervisors. Like, I've really, really enjoyed my time with each supervisor I've had in every single department. And I felt really fortunate to be in such a welcoming space, not only as a young person, but just a woman in mining in general. You don't really know what to expect. But yes, Diavik's always been such a welcoming and great place. And there's a reason why after my co-op, I was keen to resign.
It was I'm guessing it sounded like it was an easy yes when they offered you an ongoing role.
Totally.
So when you paint the picture, you get on the plane, you land, how big does the site feel?
It can feel big. I know Diavik compared to some other sites is definitely a bit smaller when you look at a caddy across the way and how big their footprint is.
Dispersed. Yeah,
Diavik's pretty contained. But yeah, I'd never been to somewhere so remote before, so I think just seeing the giant rock pile and their wind turbines and everything, even though you can see it all in the plane window, once you're on the ground, you're like, wow, I'm out of mindset.
Here I am.
It can feel big. I mean, now that I've been there for over 5 years, I know all the different places, and so it doesn't feel as big anymore. But I think at the time it was a bit overwhelming. And
how far away did you feel the first time compared to the last time that you went? Like, were you surprised at how long it took to get there?
It's one of those things, I don't know. It's a couple hour flight when we fly in and out of Edmonton, and then we stop through Yellowknife as well. And Canada's so spread out that you can go on a 5-hour plane ride and you're in Toronto from Vancouver or wherever else. So the couple hour plane ride didn't feel far, but it's the minute I would look on a map and realize how far north I was, or think of all my family and friends back home down south. And then also I think the lack of trees being above the tree line was something that I was really, that is such an interesting experience. I mean, the prairies, sometimes when you're out in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and you can see forever and ever, but growing up in the mountains in Vancouver, it's not like that. But yeah, even compared to Yellowknife, just the lack of trees in the tundra, I was like, wow.
Yeah, there is no chance.
No
chance for a tree, not even
you can see the caribou go for miles. It's awesome.
So you would be one of the few Southerners to see caribou on the regular. And how interesting is that?
Oh, it's so cool to be able to see all the different animals that exist up there that we don't really see down south. The caribou migration that you can see across the lake on a yearly basis is super fascinating. I've seen moose. I personally haven't seen muskox, but I've heard of people who've seen muskox. But yeah, it's just such a privilege to be able to work in such a beautiful part of the country that most people never get to visit. And I feel so lucky that I get to spend some of my life up there and work with people all across the country, east, west, north, south.
And around the world too.
Very much so.
That's something that I always think people don't necessarily realize is there's a huge culture share when you get to a remote mine site like that, because you literally are depending on each other for everything. And you're depending on the company to do the right things and make sure that you have what you need to do your work and to, live, in a physically healthy way. And, all of the catering and all of the camp service and all of the logistics that go into it are something that, it's not a natural understanding that most people have. Is like you're taking every single thing that you need and somehow it's getting to site.
Yes.
And the people are coming to site from everywhere. So that part of it, I think is really interesting as well. Being able to see the phases of closure, I think just knowing enough people in mining, the closure end of it is really not exciting, right?
Yeah.
It's the sadness of something coming to an end that everyone was very happy to have. So I know that in their progressive closure plan, they have been dealing with the fact that those jobs are ending as well. And, it's not something I think anybody takes lightly.
No.
And when something that significant that has had such a phenomenal benefit to the area, to the region, to the territory, and to the Indigenous communities that are nearby as well, I think it's very much turning a page for people, for culture, for economy. But that's me talking about it a lot. So how does it feel to be part of that?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting experience knowing that we've had closure plan for a long time and we know Diavik is coming to an end. But I mean, our management team and our senior leadership has done such an incredible job preparing us. For example, with our My Path program and helping all different employees prepare for what their next step's going to be, whether it's retirement or redeployment or transitioning to a different type of job. They're really trying to set us up for success. And they've done such a great job supporting us through this change, because it is tough, especially for people who've been, I mean, even my 5 years can feel like a long time, but for people who've been there even longer and it's kind of all they've ever known, it's definitely daunting and can be a scary thing, but they've provided so much support. And from what I've heard from some of my older coworkers, like this was not the norm ever in the mining industry. The amount of support that they are prepping for employees through closure is such an incredible thing, and something I hope other mining companies look to as well.
And I mean, it's weird to be having a podcast and really giving kudos to a company, but they have truly invested in the futures of the people who work there as well. And I don't mind saying good job, Rio Tinto. Because that, as you say, that is not the norm. And for a lot of smaller companies, it's just not possible. You get a really you get a really sincere thank you for everything, and a wish that they wish you luck and they mean it, but the actual support and the transition is something that I know Divik's had for a long time, and it's part of Rio's. So if you want to, contemplate your future on a podcast, that's completely up to you. And we can just snip this part out if you don't want to. But do you have a plan, or do you stay on longer? Like, are you part of the closure team as well?
Sure, yeah, I'm going through. So we'll finish production here in a few months, and then I'll be supporting through the underground decommissioning phase as part of my job as a hydrogeologist.
Oh, very cool.
And doing the different monitoring for that as we remove everything that we need from underground. And then so that's probably going to be ending around summer. And then after that will be my time for some next steps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it's amazing that you're getting that experience so early in your career. And I know that, you're 5 years in, but as far as careers go, that is still pretty early. And you've had a chance to work in an amazing spot as well.
Yeah.
When we look back at a young woman deciding to go remote, what would you tell her?
I would tell her to still say yes. I know it's very scary. I mean, full transparency, I definitely cried on my first flight to Diavik as a co-op student because it was my first time really leaving home. And again, I had no idea what to expect.
You didn't just take a step, you kind of leaped.
I leaped.
Took a flying leap.
Yes.
Quite literally.
I know. I had never even flown. I'd never been to Edmonton before, I don't think. And yeah, it was definitely a big step, and I was so nervous, but I think just knowing how good of a team I had waiting for me, and mentors and just my coworkers in general. And you learn so much on a job. I know it can be scary entering a co-op or graduating from university and thinking you don't have those practical skills, but you learn it as you go. And I think just learning to say yes and being flexible and learning to be resilient and a good teammate is what's led me to where I am today. And I've worked with so many incredible women as well at Diavik that have also older than me, and then some that are the same age, and they've been such incredible contacts and people to work off of. But I mean, also kudos to the other members of our team too, who have just been so welcoming and have always ensured that we have a seat at the table.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
And because you're there, I think that'll be such a positive effect, and it's such an amazing growing phase for you as a professional.
Yeah.
In your field. And your field as well is a touch rare.
Yeah.
Right. So going into geophysics is, what makes you interested in that? I talked to another high school student who was looking at it, and she said, well, physics is kind of the only thing I really found interesting. I was like, and that's rare as well.
Yeah.
So what was it about geophysics that appealed to you that ended up? So sort of this base area. When I hear your story, there's an element of, I'm interested in this, I'm going to pursue it. I'm interested in this next thing, I'm going to pursue it. And each time you pursued something, it opened up a new set of windows for you, a new set of doors. To look through and to actually then step through. So how do what happened in your life that you had the bravery to go and do that? To say, I'm going to do this thing, and then to say yes to the co-op? Because to me, that sounds like the big yes.
Yes,
the yes to the job sounded like an easier yes.
Totally.
I already know the place. I know, where the dorms are. I know what the food is.
Yeah.
I know that I'll probably only have ice cream sometimes, even though it's there all the time.
Yeah, more than I should admit.
It's ice cream is the thing that gets everybody.
That's the best part. Everyone loves the Diavik soft serve machine.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it comes up in every conversation.
I believe
it's like, how's the food? Well, I know they have ice cream every day. And I'm like, yeah, do you have ice cream every day?
It's tempting.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely kudos to my parents. They're both science teachers. And I mean, for my entire life, they always encouraged me to stay curious and pursue things I was interested in. I mean, I was always a pretty academic kid, but pretty jack of all trades. Like, yes, I pursued the sciences, but I loved my languages. I love math. I love social studies. I just really enjoyed learning in general and being curious. But I think the reason why I sort of picked geophysics is yeah, I love math and physics, but I knew I didn't want to pursue directly just
Super
physics.
academic.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't probably going to end up with a PhD. And again, my mom working with minerals ed and having that earth science background, I knew the earth was interesting, and living in Vancouver and dealing with like seismology and earth.
Okay.
So that was like a interesting part to me. So yeah, I just kind of looked at the different degrees, and I knew I didn't want to do chemistry. I knew I didn't want to do biology. I was like crossing off all the other ones.
Yeah.
I knew I was like, I'm going to go into sciences, but just what exactly? And then, yeah, I basically just picked geophysics because I thought it sounded cool.
All right.
I never thought of the career prospects after.
Okay.
But I was interested in it. And then, I mean, the geophysics program at UBC was so amazing. It's a very small program, but the professors are from all over, whether it's glaciology or they work for NASA. It was such a great foundation. And it just encouraged me to keep learning and stay curious. And then, yeah, I guess with the co-op as well, I didn't really know what to get into with geophysics because it is such a small niche field. So I was just,
It's pretty niche.
it is very niche. It's a very small community. Mining's a small community. I think geophysics is even smaller.
Yeah.
And I was just applying to different programs. I was applying to physics labs and random computer science co-ops, and then
Because with your background, you could, I think, very easily have gone into modeling, like computer modeling, coding,
major,
that aspect of it, especially with the hydrogeological piece that you're doing. Looking at it that way, I think, there are a small program, but very niche, which means you can go in a number of directions quite deeply and quite readily. So it's interesting that the earth science piece of it stuck with you.
Totally.
Yeah. And I mean, as a former science teacher as well, former, biology and earth science and comms. So that's my background. We didn't really chat much about that the day of, but a teacher walking by an ed thing and looking at it and saying, "Oh, look, they're doing all of the things that I've done in life. They're looking at mining, they're looking at earth science, they're looking at career and the comms aspect of it." I was curious about that as well. For you, it was probably an easy yes with your mom being involved as a volunteer and looking at it. So did you come to Roundup as a kid as well?
I came in university. So when I was looking for co-op jobs, kind of back in pre Diavik, so like 2018, 2019. And then I'd come to my mom, who helps facilitate the Teachers' Day for Minerals Ed. So I come and listen to those talks, and they have separate speakers for Teachers' Day from the secondary students. So I had been around Minerals Ed and Roundup before, and then I haven't been for the last few years because I've been at work. My rotation has always landed. They've always asked if I would ever come speak, but I've always been up north, and then this was the first year. Pretty much since I was a student that I was home for it. And so I was more than happy to come chat to students, because I think it is so important. I get this younger generation into mining and break the stereotypes and the taboos. And I think a lot of my photos in my presentation had a lot of my coworkers and I, who a lot of them are female and women in mining. And so I wanted to show that we are there and we are out there.
Yeah.
And it's important to be a mentor and a friend to encourage people to enter this industry, because you want young people to enter it, and you want to be responsible and leave it better than when you found it. And so,
and I think that's something, and that might be like the perfect idea to wrap it up, is my understanding, as a person who's observed projects in different areas of the world, is that the project itself can do great things when it's done well, and it can be destructive and divisive and problematic, disastrous even when it's not done responsibly. So getting people into the industry who are committed to the responsible part of it and who see it as a positive and to see it as a necessity. And, we all know in the industry that mining is not a luxury.
No.
Mining is not a maybe we need it. Mining is absolutely necessary for life in everything that we do. And, language wise, if I had some wishes come true, I would say that we want to make the most of our resources so that we can kind of push into a circular economy kind of thinking, so that we can, showcase mining companies who are doing it well as the amazing environmentalists that they are.
Yeah.
Right. It's not contrary to environmentalism. It's environmentalism in action. And that's something that, I think is great to showcase and talk about and think about as well, because it is such a major disruption to the actual surface, and it's so manageable.
Totally. Yeah. And I just think in general, exactly what you said. Mining isn't going anywhere. So you want smart and creative and responsible people to enter it to make it a better thing. And we need these resources. And these kids that grew up in the city like I did, because you don't see those mines out in the remote parts of the world. And so it's just a reminder that we can help make it better. And even though you don't see the mines right next to the big city, they're still there. And how do we make it better? And I think that's also just why I keep saying how much I love Diavik, but it's true. And the programs and how they work to, for example, like our wind farm and our solar farm and the different projects we work on to help make it better, and how they work with their communities. I've learned so much from them and from our local community members. And it's been such a privilege to work there and work with them and bring that knowledge down here. And it's so important to share with the future generation.
And do you have any stories from community that are kind of your favorite stories? Like if you go back home, you're like, okay, guys, here's what I got to do in my last 2 weeks. Like I got to do this and I got to do that and all these other pieces. So.
Everyone down south loves to hear about when we get to see the Aurora Borealis. That is something that I never got to see growing up here, which I feel like in newer or in most recent years, they've had these sort of geomagnetic events, and so people have
minis here.
Yes, but I've also been at work for
all of them.
But yes, I think explaining, like being able to see the aurora from my window in camp is such a cool thing, and just being able to work in an environment where it's 35 below. I never experienced that. But it honestly is the people too, just learning from coworkers who have lived up north their whole lives and learning what it means to them. And some people fly in from communities that have under 200 people. So so when they come to site, they're with more people than what is in their community.
That's kind of mind blowing when you put it that way, right? It's like you leave your tiny community and you go to your small city or your town of a site.
You just learn so much from the people you work with. And I just love the community aspect. And it's so fun being able to become friends and coworkers with people truly all across the country and all across the world. But yeah, I think the best stories are, of course, the ice road. Everyone loves hearing about the ice road and the aurora.
So when you're on site, do you go on the ice road at all? Or do you have any need with your role?
No. The ice road is mostly just for bringing supplies to and from site from Yellowknife throughout the year. So we have that, 6-week period in February and March where we get a majority of our supplies for the whole year. But for our role, no, we're just on site or we're underground. But yeah.
And I think one of the surprising things for people who might be listening to it who aren't familiar with mining is what happens temperature wise when you're underground in the Arctic.
Yes, it is a bit cold, but it stays a pretty consistent temperature of about 5 to 6 degrees Celsius all year round. I think when you think of mines further down south, and it can be very hot underground and they have to work on cooling their air, they have the opposite problem at Diavik where we have to heat our air. It is, I will say, it's warmer than working open pit and on surface for most of the year. So it's good sweater weather underground. I don't mind it, but yeah, there's so many things you have to consider when you're working so far north, working underground and dealing with permafrost and the dewatering program. Of course, working on a lake is such a huge feat and something so incredible at Diavik. But yes, ventilation is a major part of working underground, and then also making sure it doesn't freeze is something we have to consider too. So
what are some of the other northern things that surprised you when you were first starting out? Because I don't know that 5 years in, anything weather related would be a shock to you. I don't think anything remote related would be a shock to you. Seeing a fox trying to get into the kitchen, that's probably old news. Seeing a bear cross and having to walk with bear spray and have your environmental people out with you and to make sure that the wildlife doesn't, snack on any other workers.
I mean, when I first started, my biggest shock was how many bugs there were in the summer. Like, how cold it's going to be in winter.
So real.
But you don't realize it is going to end up being plus 25, 20 degrees in the summer, and the bugs are out.
How do you keep your mind together? Because some people actually do kind of lose it.
Yeah.
Because of the bugs.
I use a lot of bug spray and just kind of hope for the best. And hopefully you're with someone who attracts more bugs than you do. Getting out early in the morning, if you go into your work. Yeah, that is a plus side to working underground is there's less bugs than on surface.
Many fewer mosquitoes and sandflies and black flies.
Yeah.
So is Diavik, are there sandflies or black flies or both?
I think it's just black flies.
Black flies
and mosquitoes, yeah.
I personally will agree with you. Black flies are little beastie devils because for anyone who hasn't been in a swarm of black flies, what they like to do is they land on you and then they crawl up until they find skin that they can bite painlessly. And then what you get for your trouble of being outside is this incredible itch and welt that just bleeds and gets itchier and itchier and itchier.
Yeah.
So bug spray for the win.
Totally. Yeah, that's the one thing growing up on the West Coast you're not too used to, but everyone in the prairies, I'm sure they're well familiar with it. So
yeah. And when we were here and my kids were little, there was always like a bug sweep moment when we were out in June and July, and they sort of go in a cloud and there's sort of a peak. But it was constantly, watching the hairline to make sure that they weren't getting eaten alive.
Yeah.
So we joke about a bear eating someone, but really what happens is the bugs come for you.
Totally. I will say the other amazing thing working up north is the daylight in the summer.
Yeah.
And really the sun never setting. So if I ever worked night shift, which I did a couple times as a student, but that was such an incredible thing is really when the sun doesn't set and it just kind of stays on that horizon.
It's a little low.
Yeah. It's so beautiful up north and covered in snow. Everything's so vibrant and the sky is so blue and I mean in the summers there's no snow, but it's still just as beautiful with the rolling tundra and the lake. Yeah.
And the sense of sky in the north is immense. And that's something that I think is really highlighted with the aurora that you were talking about as well.
Yeah.
So I know living in Yellowknife, it's kind of right under the ring of max aurora activity. So when you go slightly further north, does it go like fully across the sky over top of your heads, or is it a little bit pushed to the horizon?
It's more like above our head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think we're like so far north, we're slightly above that max aurora, but it is still right above our heads. And you can see it from your room in camp. It goes from the horizon and then it can continue all the way across.
Yeah. And so, you're probably one of the few people in the South who would look at an array of green aurora and be like, look, right, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
But it's not like the most spectacular.
I know.
So as a scientist, when you look at it and it goes into all of the different colors, I find when it goes into the different colors too, that's when I'm like, wow, like this is such connection between, people and everything that's going on above us. And it's sort of like, for me, I look at it and it's an interaction between us and space.
Totally.
And us and the sun as well, which is, science weirdness on my part. But I love all the stories that go with it as well.
Yeah, and Diavik's done a really good job the last few years. We've had one of our local Indigenous artists come up and we've done some painting sessions around Christmas time. And so he's taught us how to paint the aurora and we've made the most beautiful paintings. And that's been such an incredible thing learning from an amazing, incredible artist. And yes, my parents love when I bring my paintings home.
Fantastic. Yeah. And not something that anyone would be like, oh, let's do that.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder whose idea that was, because that's a great one.
Yeah, we have a pretty good camp council on site who come up with ideas to help. I mean, we spend half our lives up there, so you want to make it a fun and enjoyable place.
And you really can only work 12 hours a day, which leaves you a few more 2 to 4 hours so that you can live. I noticed in your pictures you had you were really active at site.
Yeah.
And doing, a lot of the things. So do you hit the gym, like the weight room, or do you hit the gym like game wise, like intramural style?
A bit of both. Yeah, so we have a pretty amazing gymnasium, kind of if you picture like an elementary school gymnasium, that's what it's like down below. And then we have our weight and cardio room. So definitely do the weights and cardio, but we have a pretty good sports culture at Diavik as well. So intramurals kind of between departments. I had a hockey photo, I think, from one of our Diavik Olympics. We have a pretty big pickleball scene that started a couple years ago, and that's pretty rampant on site. Yeah, it's just a great way to end the workday and take your mind off work. And then also you get to know other people that you don't necessarily work with on the day to day. So like the friends I've made in pickleball are from so many different departments, but you kind of have this fun common activity at night. That's just like a great way to decompress and
a good reset to and a good piece. So we're just about at time, and we're persevering through a hallway session. So we have the doors and some other conversations as well. So I think this is a great time to say thank you. I appreciated your presentation to the high school kids as well. And I really appreciate your time today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Resourceful Women is a product of the Prospector News. Opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speaker and speaker alone. Resourceful Women is for educational and entertainment purposes, and nothing in the podcast should be taken as investment advice. Always consult with a licensed personal financial advisor before making any investment purchases.